Okay, so welcome today. My name is Andrew Ferris. I'm the CEO of On This Spot, the history walking tour app. Today, I'm going to be showcasing, kind of giving a complete rundown of how to do then and now photography, which is kind of our the basis of what we've been doing. It's been our bread and butter for the past 9 years that we've been working in this company. So today, I'll just be going through kind of, who we are, what we do, the story of On the Spot, and how that kind of illustrated to me the power of then and now photography, for getting people interested in history and for just getting people fascinated by, diving into the stories that every different community has. Once we've gone through that, I will explain to you, how to prepare your shoot, how to have fun with it, how to make sure that you're able to get out and, line and have planned out all your photographs so that you're able to kind of bang out a lot in a single go. And then I'll go through a whole range of different tips and tricks for lining up shots. Now, I know it's not rocket science, but I have seen a lot of different, let's say when a professional photographer goes out, they often, if it's their first time doing then and now photography, I will notice that they have not lined up their photos particularly well. It does take a bit of training of your eye to kind of figure out how to do it properly and how to get, a perfectly lined up shot. And so what I want to do here today is just kind of help you figure out how you can train your eye for lining up these shots. And then you can kind of, once you have figured it out, basically, once you have sort of this mental checklist, you're able to go out and get highly accurate then and now photos, which you'll be able to, you can use for marketing promotion. You can use them they're great on social media. They're great for selling as prints. And if you work in a museum or a heritage society, which I think many of you do, or for promoting tourism, all that kind of thing. And then I will, after that, I'll just do a quick note on editing, and then just explain maybe how we can help you further with that in the future. So without further ado, let's get started. And I'm hoping this should be about 45 minutes. But I started doing then and now photography in 2013. So this was when I was, after university, I studied history. I was very passionate about history, and I wanted to find something to do with history. I did not particularly want to become a high school teacher or university professor, but I wanted to find a way that I could just travel and learn about history. And so I started a history travel blog. And when I was in Nagasaki, I started seeing all these plaques showing what the city looked like in the days after the atomic bombing in 1945, and they were taken. The plaques were placed at the same spot where the historic photographer was standing, and so I started shooting those plaques and then reshooting them from the same angle. And it wasn't like a new idea, but it's not like then and now photography is not a field that has been very well developed. There's not a lot of people doing it. So I started. So this was one of my first ones, I guess. They moved the cathedral back about 80 feet when they rebuilt it, the Urakami Cathedral. Afterwards, then I went to Europe, and I spent a few months backpacking around Europe. And I went to Juno Beach, where the Canadians landed in Normandy. And there is probably the most famous set of then and now photos that you'll come across that kind of pops up as a major kind of trending item on social media or Reddit or something every June 6th. There's then and now photos of D-Day. I did these, I guess, I did a large set at most of the different invasion beaches as well. And I found these to be, just an immensely moving experience as a Canadian, going to Juno Beach and seeing, where all these bunkers and where the soldiers stormed the shore. And I was walking around, trying to find all these, figure out where these historic photos had been taken from and retaking them from the same angle. And I wanted to find on the ground kind of step-by-step accounts of what the soldiers went through that day, because I have read those before back home, but I didn't have them with me at the time, and I spent I spent many hours trying to. It was very hard to get Wi-Fi anywhere, so going to different coffee shops trying to find Wi-Fi so that I could just start trying to find in Google really eyewitness accounts of what it was like landing on Juno Beach, and then reading about the history while I was there, and that made it very. Reading these kinds of first-person accounts while you're on the spot is kind of why we named it, why we call it On the Spot. It really creates a tangible connection with the past when you are, in the place where the history happened, and you can see the images, what it was like, and read the words of the people who were there. There wasn't an app for that, or it wasn't easy to find that information anywhere. So I returned to Canada. I partnered with my friend Chris. And we decided to build this concept into an app, combining then and now photos with really engaging storytelling. And every stop on a walking tour in this app would be where a historic photographer was standing when they took a historic photo. The app was another extremely moving experience, I think, where the Canadians launched a brutal failed attack in 1942, a raid that did not turn out well. And it's today a lovely little seaside town. I also went to Berlin. This is obviously after the Soviets stormed Berlin in 1945. And when I came back to Canada, we built the app in Vancouver with 11 walking tours, and I went out and took 600 then and now photos to use as building blocks for these walking tours. And we just built the app, Chris and I, to see if anyone would like it. And much to our pleasure, much to our delight, many people did. Also, whenever I was creating these then and now photo essays on our blog before, or on my blog, they would go viral. They proved to be extremely popular. And once we launched the app, it proved to be extremely popular. We got an enormous amount of media coverage, and people would just love the then and now photography that we did. And so here I've just selected just a few examples just from Toronto, of one of the many cities that we've covered, just to kind of give you an idea of, how then and now photography, it can illustrate a number of things. It can show how cities have changed so dramatically. And it can also surprise you with buildings that have survived and buildings that have not survived. So sometimes you can kind of, a lot of the times, I think people get emotional reactions when they see what has been lost and what has been preserved. And also seeing it in its original, seeing these places in their, past state can be really moving for people. So yeah, I think the power of then and now photos is really it helps people inspire curiosity. It makes them look at their surroundings in a new way. We create these crossfade images that combine then and now, and they really help illustrate, I think, that the places we are walking, the places we are living every day, have been places where people have lived, people who are every bit as alive as we are today, who have their dreams, ambitions, hopes, and fears, and it's, I think, combining then and now photos really is a way to create a tangible connection to those people. It can also really these photos can really spur thoughtful, make you think about how rapidly our society has changed in just the past century. The camera was invented in 1850, and most of Canada was not settled at that point by Europeans, but it's only a very small sliver of history where Canada has been here and people have lived here, but the amount of change in that relatively short period of time has been dramatic. Looking at, if you're just looking at cars, and then also just cultural practices such as, like different clothing, different ways, like we didn't all drive cars everywhere, every day, all the time before. Things that we take for granted today, you can really be confronted with by seeing how people used the same and lived in the same places as we did so differently, so recently. So I think I found with the blog and then with the app that these then and now photos are a great way to get people, even people who are not typically interested in history, to really engage with it, I think, in a way that's, oftentimes most people associate history with just a boring list, like high school history class where it's just memorizing a series of dates and names and treaties. And what we find is, with using then and now photos, it brings an immediacy to history. It's all around us, and it's something that we're living in right now. So after we started in Vancouver, we started working with other communities around Canada primarily, and may have worked with a few of you here actually. Yeah, anyway, just looking at the list, but we've done over 100 communities across Canada. There's even a few here that we haven't launched yet. We are in every province. We haven't made it to the territories yet, but that's a major goal. And I think we have basically what we are hoping to do is just kind of become Canada's definitive history app. We want it so that whenever someone goes and joins or visits a city or a town, or even a village or a hamlet, they can open their on the spot app and then find some historic walking tours and learn about the history that surrounds them. So we've been at it for 9 years. We launched the app in 2016, and we're gonna keep at it. So onto the photography. So I'll just explain kind of what our process is as we go about conducting then and now photography in a community. We don't just do then and now photography now. A lot of these communities that are on here, actually, we do audio tours, we do driving tours, we do virtual tours, we do video tours. But we started out with then and now photography and written walking tours, and that's kind of been our bread and butter. And it's always something that I'm very passionate about and love to do. So whenever we go to a new community, we partner with the community. We'll go out and shoot between 25 and 500 then and now photos. We work with the local museums and heritage societies to identify the most interesting photos, a great geographic spread of photos, so that we're trying to covering as many different neighborhoods as we can. That we find photos that are help us tell a story that the community wants to share, and then we go out and we kind of figure out, do a guess of where they were originally located, map them out, and then we go out, shoot the photos over a period of several days, and then we edit them, combining some of the best ones into the crossfade images that you've seen here, which we use for marketing and promotion and stuff like that. And we also use them to sell prints. So I have some here. I don't know if you can see that actually with the background. Wait, I'm gonna put it back on my face. Anyway, we have prints. I don't know. These sell quite nicely, actually. And also our partners can, sell these as prints and use them as a way to generate revenue. It's great art that can go on people's homes. It's always very gratifying how popular they're. Users in the app, they can. So every stop on the walking tour, they can combine. Is generally where a historic photographer was standing when they took a then and now or a historic photo. And then there's also an in-app camera that allows users to create their own then and now photo. So, if you want to do this and go take your own historic photos, which is something that I think is a lot of fun, I really recommend it. You should begin by picking a set of images to recreate. So when you find these images, I assume most of you are associated with museums and heritage societies or archives. You have access to historic photo collections. Whenever we work with partners, we always work with the local heritage or museum authorities, and they give us access to their photos within our app. And so whenever we partner with the community, we begin by mapping out where we think historic photos were. So here's this one of St. John, New Brunswick, a perspective photo map. This is like a basic, I don't know, we have a fairly, we programmed our own kind of internal way of mapping out historic photos. But I find having a digital map of them is extremely helpful. I think it's like it's also because when you're walking around, you want to be able to, rather than printing them out, which is what I did when I first started, it becomes extremely difficult to keep organized. And if you want to bang out a bunch of photos in a day, maybe, and then know which ones are good, which ones are bad, which ones are inaccessible or just are not very compelling. And there's other ones that might be really good, but there's a car parked there, so maybe you want to come back the next day, or when the weather is better. So you want to try and pick a large selection of photos, I think, and then put them on a map so that you can walk around. I just, as a simple way you might want to do this, is just use Google My Maps. You can see here, we put it in the map. This is one way you can do it, with a link to the historic photo source, and then maybe any hints about if you're like, when you are mapping them out, maybe hints about where you expect the photo might be, because when you're on the ground, there might be something that you might have missed when you're actually on the computer and trying to pinpoint a specific location. And then so pick interesting photos that you want to use. Is something happening in them? Photos of people, especially wearing different clothes. If they're looking into the camera, you can have things that create a connection, that are just interesting. I mean, it's fairly self-explanatory. If there's cars in them, they help date the image. If there are have things changed dramatically, or are they surprisingly constant? We try and go for a mix of things where, say where buildings have been demolished, and it's just like it's either a new modern building or it's just a empty parking lot. We still do those photos because when you mix them in with a bunch of very compelling historic then and now photos, then people get emotional reactions, and we see in our comments and feedback, people get emotional reactions to seeing what has been lost, and it also helps them realize the value of heritage preservation, because when a building is gone, it's gone forever. When something has been of heritage value is removed, it's not coming back. And so like preserving heritage buildings is a constant thing. It's a constant ongoing effort, and I think that then and now photos that show both things that have been preserved and things that haven't are a good way to promote that. We also think, I also would recommend picking more photos than you might need. I know a lot of the partners that we work with, they agonize over which photos that we should go out and reshoot. But oftentimes you don't know which ones are going to turn out well until you are on the ground, I think. So we take like until you are out there, it either might not be accessible, you might not be a great angle on it, or there might be something there today that actually makes the photo more compelling in when you're comparing the two. So I would recommend that for taking more than you need. Cast a wide net. You can also, we often color the different ones for, lower priority ones and higher priority ones, or aerial ones when we do drone then and now photos. So on our mapping system, but there's a bunch of different ways you can do it so that you can prioritize what you're going to do. But I would recommend trying to get in more than you need. And then you get out there. I would say, so I'd say basically the best practices are, so when you're planning on getting out and doing the then and now photography, it's just like a great way to explore your community. It takes you to a lot of places that you are just not, that you're not typically going to go to, streets you're not going to walk down. If you're a new visitor to a city, if it's a means of exploring a city, it's a fantastic way to get to know a city, really. I would recommend, my practice is, I would recommend using a DSLR camera with a 35 to 50 millimeter lens for specifically, I'll bring a tripod for specifically very important shots, ones that, I know this one's going to be one that we are using as for marketing and stuff. And then I'll have my camera on one hand, my phone in the other, where I have the images up. I can refer to the images and also all the information that comes with the images about where it went, where it was located and stuff. Hints that might help me try and figure out while I'm walking around where a historic photo was taken from. I plan a walking route. So, look at try and usually I'll start in the, you'll have like a center downtown cluster most of the time, and then like a spread of photos around photo locations around the out, further out into the community. But communities 100 years ago were a lot smaller than they are today, and people lived a lot more concentrated in downtown cores, which means that it's very easy to cover a single high street or downtown street with 100 photos, and then you'll get nothing on the next block over once you get into the suburbs. What were the suburbs? So if you just I usually hit the main area downtown, and then just start working my way out in a cyclical pattern, and go from there. I would say plan for the weather, the busiest times of day, or rather the least busiest times of day. Which is, it might be a Sunday is good usually, unless it's, a tourist area, in which case the weekday would be better, etc. I find because if you're taking a lot of photos of buildings, you want soft light. And that means, if you're doing it in high sun, oftentimes because, you're not sure exactly which way the street is going to be, or which way the sun is going to be and which side of the street it's going to be on. You might get really intense shadows, and which you'll have to, clean up in post during, very sunny days. But I really like ideal scattered clouds in the summertime. Also, just because the clouds create something interesting in the sky. If you have the top half of the photo, it's just the sky. So if it's just blue, it's less interesting. And then I'd say bring a power bank too. Just because if you're referring to your phone constantly, you want to be able to keep checking that as well. And then it's like a scavenger hunt. I was just it's a great way to explore community. I was just down in Steveston, which is one of our partners. It's a suburb of it's part of Richmond. It's an old historic port. I had some friends come with me, and I don't know, she just sent me like a silly video that this is deafening. Wait 1 second. A video that she sent me of like when her just walking around. She was following me around while I was just doing photography. So it doesn't look like glamorous, but it's a great way to have a nice day out. And you get to see do all the touristy stuff. So it's Anyway, so those are those considerations so far. Some considerations for your camera is the aim is to figure out exactly where the historic photographer was standing and point the camera in the same direction. So I get a lot of questions about, is it difficult with the focal length or the field? Is it difficult, like old cameras? Is it difficult to match up the photos? And the answer is no, actually. They had a very basic, old cameras had a pretty predictable focal length. So if you have a basic 35 foot 50 millimeter lens, it'll be pretty much the same. However, the field of view of new lenses is much wider, so actually the old photos will be probably about like a ninth or whatever of the field of view of your own photo. So what I would usually do is take zoomed out photos and then zoom in progressively as well, until you're kind of matching the frame of the historic photo. So you're always, if the old photo, you're not able to fit everything in with your current modern lens, you are too close. You're not in the right spot. So that's a consideration as well. Also, I think a lot of you may know this, but some of you may not, which I find it very fascinating. But old camera technologies are extremely high resolution. I know there's even like the very first mass use camera technology, the daguerreotype. I think it'd have an equivalent of like 100,000 megapixels in an image today. Now we are just because we look at low res reproductions of historic photos most of the time. We tend to think of them as much lower resolution than they actually are. But actually, if you have a good reproduction of an old photo, then you want to make sure that your camera is high enough resolution so that your picture doesn't look bad beside that one. Another thing to note is assume that say this photo, this guy's using a tripod. Tripods are very common, extremely almost ubiquitous on early photographs. and a lot of the early streetscapes. If you have a photo from the 19th century, it was probably taken with a tripod. So that was something you should take into account when you are considering the height off the ground of the photo of the photographer, and that is something that I'll return to in a bit. Okay, so now let's get into training your eye on lining up a photo. So and I'm going to go through a few examples here, and then once you kind of start to figure out what to look for, I think it becomes pretty straightforward on the people I've trained. On the people I've trained, it's not rocket science once again, but it just does take a little bit of thinking about. So start with a general location. So we're looking straight down the street. We're not on the sidewalk. The sidewalk's going to the side. And the street is terminating in the distance. And then we are also looking at buildings. What buildings are here? Okay, so I happen to know these ones are still there. So that's something to take into account, especially where those two roofs intersect. And that's something I'll return to in a bit. We have here, this building is not there, but buildings almost always tend to sit in the footprint of like the same footprint as the historic building that preceded it, especially commercial buildings. This might not be the case with malls and stuff, but you can generally, if you pick like the corner of a historic building, it'll be in the same place as a new one, and it's also pleasing to the eye. When you're comparing past and present, if you just line up the building, the corner of the building in the same spot. Also, telephone poles are a nice hint that you can look at. So how far apart are the telephone poles? So, you can see the way that from the angle on it, this man is the photographer, he or she was standing to the right of the totem poles, of course. But that's a nice way to, if you have the same telephone poles today, it's often possible to line them up, precisely just by counting them and getting the distance between them roughly equal. It's a nice, line into the distance. Sidewalks are massive. I always look for sidewalks. Sidewalks also, they do change sometimes, but not less often than you'd think. The footprint of the sidewalks, especially in larger cities, very rarely changes. You might have wooden boardwalks back before 1905 or 1910, but they're still in the same and they're still in the same footprint. Generally, they might be a bit wider now, but it's another thing when you're lining up a shot that is pleasing to the eye to look at. And then also intersections. So looking at the foreground, you always get a lot of hints, and especially because it's easy to kind of focus on building. But if you look at the foreground, it's very if you don't look at the foreground, rather, you might easily miss some key hints. So here's the intersection, right? You see the curve of the sidewalk. This is an intersection here. And a lot of old photos too, and a lot of old communities, there will be like wooden boardwalks will indicate, you can kind of see where they terminate, and then there's like a crossing because it's like a wooden crossing at the intersection to because it'd be so muddy and stuff, and so you can often see those from actually quite far away. Another thing is the slope in the ground. Almost never changes. Now, this isn't a great example for using that, but it's great. It's very important to keep an eye on the slope of the ground. Maybe around ports, basically ports and large malls is where it usually changes. And another one here. So this building is not here. However, you can see the pediment above this doorway. You can see half of it. So it is a door that is. So basically, this is like this is facing on 45 degrees onto the street. So this is on the corner. So that's the corner right there. And then, you can see humans here, a size perspective. So one of the biggest questions here is how far away from the curb you should be. So you're trying to figure out how far away from the curb you should be and how far back. So the intersection tells you how far back, as well as this door, and the curb tells you, okay, you can see there's humans there. That's helpful. It's about a car length, I guess, about 12, 15 feet. So anyway, I went out. And there's streetcar tracks here too. Now those are a great helper, but I mean they'll at least indicate to you where the middle of the street is. They're just kind of straight lines going off, but they are not there currently. So I went out just yesterday in Vancouver, downtown, and using our handy camera tool in our app, I just tried to reshoot this photo and line it up so you can see, and so you can use the opacity slider there. So you can see it's pretty easy to line up. So you have the sidewalk. You're looking at the pediment there. I got that's a little bit off, but we have here and here. So actually, I didn't save that image in the app, but this is the old one I did way back. So here, so once again, sidewalk, pediment, buildings, and yeah, so that turned out pretty well. Here's another one. So I find it very helpful to think in terms of axes when you are trying to figure out where to stand. It's either X, Y is your left, right, or sorry, X is your left, right, Y is forward and backwards, and Z is height off the ground. Now, X and Y are, of course, the most important. Z becomes important when you're very close to something, generally. But if you are able to figure out where things are in relation to each other, and if the two things are one thing is in front of another thing, and you're able to line them up precisely, you're able to lock on that x-axis, and that means you're standing in exactly the right place in terms of left or right. Now you just have to figure out if you need to go forward or back. So here, this is an easy one. So we have windows here. So we see this building in the foreground intersects with one of the half of a window here, and it happens to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 and a half windows. So you just have to go to where the 8 and a half windows or 8 and a half windows is from a left-right perspective, and you're in the right spot. Another one here is this column here. You can see here, this is at the edge of this window. So as long as you can line, so if you get those two of these will help line up to, triangulate to a y-axis. But another thing too is this pediment here. So you can see this cornice. So this cornice here, you see where it intersects, it gives you an up down. So it's right above there of this building. So that's your y-axis. So that you can basically lock precisely on. So on the left-right portion, you just walk until your view is exactly half the window, and then you walk forward and backwards until that cornice is right above that one on the rear building, and then you have the z-axis. Now this is how high you should be off the ground. Now this usually doesn't matter too much, but if you're being specific here, because if you are really low to the ground, that would move you back on the y-axis. But if oftentimes, like if you are you may line up all the reference points that you can see precisely, but if you're not in the right, or as well as you can, but if you're not in the right spot, you might have missed something. Usually it'll be how high you are off the ground, and therefore if you're further away, then it kind of starts breaking all the angles elsewhere in the image, and things stop lining up. It's just if you can get over hyper focus on one reference point. But here, so it's good to know exactly how high off the ground you should be. But here you can see the photographer was about eye height with the man in that car, or with a horse. He was just standing at a full height. This is a artillery parade during artillery battalion parading through Vancouver during the First World War. So lining up this one, I think what I did is just to illustrate. One, you can see like this is not a high enough angle here, but also I counted the windows and I realized I could see too many windows. So I moved forward until I got 8 and a half, which is right there. So that's my x-axis is locked right there. Now the y-axis, also you think about where would a photographer have been standing. Now typically it's on the sidewalk, although back in the day, they often there was not very many cars. There's not very much street traffic, so people stood in the road to take a lot of pictures, which is something that you have to be careful when you're recreating historic photos. You're dashing in and out of traffic. So anyway, I was able to line that one up nicely. The end result was, because the bus kind of wrecked it, but you can see that. And then that, and then everything else lined up nicely outside of that. Yeah. So once again, thinking axes, X, Y, and Z. All right, let's try another one. And if anyone has any questions, just let me know in comments. So this one, we have a number of surviving buildings. This is a cool shot because it's a nice sunny or snowy day in during the Great Depression in Vancouver. What we have here is this building still here is a tall, imposing, interesting building, as well as these ones. So you look for where things intersect with one another. So you can see this roof intersects right there with this building because it's one building in front of another. What we also see is we have a sidewalk here. So you can see he's standing, the photographer is standing back from the sidewalk, probably, is looking about, let's say probably at the edge of, where the sidewalk, like roughly in line with the front of the building would have been behind him. We can also see this telephone pole here. No, they're not always. Sometimes telephone poles, they often are replaced, or light poles rather, but sometimes they're not. This one would be useful if you could line it up, relative to the building behind it. So it's like, just a little bit of the building in the distance is visible behind it. And then finally, we have the hood of the truck here. Now that is a big tell because the photographer is lower than the hood of the truck. So the photographer is on his knees probably. So when I was shooting this one, I couldn't quite get it to line up until I noticed that. And so I realized, and then because basically if you're too low or too high, like said this, the things, the like the sidewalk would not line up here with it kind of breaks everything, like because the sidewalk you have to you can view you have too much angle of all the street, and there's too much distance between the top and the bottom of the image. I even got a little car here to match it. So actually that one lined up quite perfectly, I think, just because I realized I had to step back a bit and then go on my knee, and that lined it up nicely. So once again, that's why it's important to look at the Z-axis. All right, here's a fourth one. Another one is quarter shots. Now these are very common, and most photos of buildings that you will reshoot are probably going to be in this angle. Well, your tendency might be just to shoot it at a 45-degree angle. But once again, small mistakes in these tend to break everything down the line, because if you have like a bunch of this huge line of buildings going down here, if you are not precisely correct on the lineup or on the angle, then they just won't line up at all. Like yours will tend to be, they'll bow out more. On this one, it doesn't work too well. So we see that this side, it's on a high angle. So what you want to do is try and figure out, okay, where am I on 45 degrees? Let's look at the lines of the roof here. This is on a higher angle than this one. So that means that you are further, or the photographer is further to the right of where the historic or of the 45-degree angle. So you move over to the right and try and line that up. We also have a terminating line out the edge of the image. Now, when you have terminating lines out the edge of the image, it's very helpful to try and line up so that the image or that the line goes out at the same point of your own frame as well. It's easy to forget that when you're focusing too much on a single, on kind of foreground or distance reference points, that you might be too zoomed in. You might not be capturing everything that's in the historic photo. And so you want to make sure that, as a mental checklist, before you take every shot, just check framing. And do I have it all captured? And like I said before, usually I'll take a zoomed out one, which will cover a huge distance, and then I'll try and zoom in to get more detail, and then pick the one in case I miss anything on the zoomed in ones. And so, yeah, this is a newspaper strike during the Second World War, or just right after, at the Vancouver Daily Star. But yeah, so try and get the lines to terminate out the same point as in your own frame. And then also, you can see here, either this photographer was extremely tall, or but he's above, or I don't know. They say people back then were much shorter, but I don't expect that he's that much taller than them. But what we see is that eye height. One, there's a clue here, is that eye height of the photographer are these I don't know, newspaper boys standing on the lamp, and if they're standing on the lamp, well, the photographer probably is too. Unfortunately, there was no elevated lamppost there today, so I wasn't able to get the camera that high. And so this one was a bit imperfect, but actually it should be much bigger. But so you see, I was at 45 degrees, and I realized you want to just make sure you take into account how much of a face of a building you're seeing and the angles of which things are terminating in the image. So it turned out okay, but I think I just need to size the image up a bit. But there's no lamp I can stand on. So you can see here. Another thing that is crucially important that I will keep mentioning is that you ought to take a spread of photos. So even when you think you're in the right spot, like I was here, what I'll do is I'll get to where I think was the right spot, and then I will take a spread of photos. So several photos, taking a step or two to the left, take a photo, another step or two to the left, take another photo to the right, do the same thing, get a spread. And usually I'll do 4 to 8 photos per spot. One, because you want to, perhaps there might be, you don't know if you're going to be in the right spot exactly lined up until you go back to your computer and you realize you screwed it up because you might have missed something that you weren't paying attention for. And so another thing there might be cars in the way and stuff. And if you're, you want to, taking more photos of, make less, you might get one that turns out better with less cars in the intersection and stuff. A lot of the time you just can't wait for cars not to be in the intersection. It's busy out there. So I would say take a spread of photos, preferably along the unlocked access, on the access where there's a bit more doubt about where there might be photos or where the exact you're not sure about. So I'll return to that in a bit. All right, this is the last example. These ones are extremely challenging. So there's close up, and there are reference points everywhere. Especially challenging is stuff in the foreground, things like these very angular stairs, which one that you can line up here. So that stair is over there. You can see how much of the surface of the stair, it varies enormously between the top and the bottom stairs, which means that the height matters enormously. The edges, angles here, buildings, the text as well. Text, especially when you're not looking at it dead on, can be very difficult to line up properly. And if but it's very satisfying when you get it. It's a nice challenge. So I would say with this one especially, you want to take a spread of photos, but this is a very tight spread. There's a very small margin for error because if you're just off just a tiny bit, it breaks all the angles. So I take the spread I'm talking about is a matter of inches. You go like here, and I'll take like several of them. So in this case, I was trying it. I actually think I did a pretty good job. But what I realized is I was too close. See, because the amount of the surface of the stair that you can view from that angle was not enough. So and also just looking at the z-axis, you can see the height. He was about waist height of the people standing there. Anyway, it turned out reasonably well. But it's hard to get every single reference point right. And so and actually I didn't save it on the app. So here's the original one I took. Whoops, wait, I just want to go back to that. So you see, and then here if you're aiming for exact precision, which is, what you want to do. So there's a slight bend in the, did I get that? See, I was a bit too close. The slight bend in the stair would have been just out of frame there. But otherwise, there, it all works. So, if you're being a perfectionist about it, and it's nice to set yourself a challenge and do the best you can. And people are very impressed, I guess, when you can get it right. Yeah, so those are my 5 examples. There's a few other just types of cases I'll just quickly go through here as well. So center points, when you're looking dead on at a building, once again, it's important that you try and get to the like if you develop an eye for standing, figuring out exactly what in the photo you're standing opposite of. Here, it feels like so. Here, if like the photographer was just about a third of the way to the left of this photo. The facade has changed enormously, but they can identify that as the spot. So and take a good spread there. If you are looking dead on but it has a wide frame, and there's you can see a change of perspective, going out to the edge of the photo. Then your photo, if you're not in the right spot, your photo, it'll start breaking all the angles pretty dramatically. So it's very important to try and figure out, what exactly you're standing opposite from on the center point and doing a spread like that. So that's center points. And railway tracks. Like I said, I think, I just included this. Just a couple of, just from last week is Stevenson. Railway tracks are a nightmare. You can almost never get them right, especially if they because, there's a lot of photos you come across where the railway tracks terminate in the foreground of the photo. You want to take a huge spread of photos over a very small amount of distance, because they bend, they go off into the distance, they're very defined, and there's 2 of them, and so the distance between them changes enormously. How much is visible to you changes enormously over the distance. And so railway tracks are hard, but this is a pretty easy one otherwise. And also the railway tracks are not the same. These are reinstalled heritage ones, but you have reference points here. Basically, how much of that window is visible in both of them is a good one. That was kind of the main one, really. Yeah. Anyway, so, and then the framing also, you want to make sure so there's a lot of, if you're going to take a picture of a building here, you might easily forget that there's all this stuff over here and to cut it off. So make sure you frame it properly. Another one is this is just to illustrate how important getting the height right is, the Z axis. Because as you can see here, this photo was taken from an elevated angle, probably about you can see it's probably about like 12 feet off the ground, maybe, something like that. But you can see here, just to illustrate just how much more of the road is visible from there, and that makes it difficult to. So when you're trying to line up things all the way up and down the street, especially shots taken from windows, can be very difficult. I mean, next to impossible to line up. You kind of, but if you are off even a bit with the height, once again, that will, if the photographer was standing fully, at full height, or, down on the tripod, that will make a difference on these long street shots where, there's stuff just going off into the distance. And so you want to make sure you get that right. Otherwise, it's less pleasing to the eye when you're sliding across, and the ground is here on your photo, and then it slides across and the ground is up here on the other one. Another thing to just note is that on old cameras, they didn't have a strong enough exposure to be able to capture mountains and stuff in the distance typically. So you're not going to be able to use those as reference on 19th century photos, but by the 20th century you start to be able to, and so that makes photographing Vancouver quite nice. And vanished buildings. Once again, like I said before, it's good to include a series of vanished buildings if you can, and you can still do them. You just need to, if you have a rough idea of where a historic building was, and you can also, if you include, you can use a bit of guesswork, as long as you have the right angle and it looks plausible. I mean, as long as you gain enough credibility with the other ones, with your highly precise other photos, I think the viewer generally appreciates these as well, because it's like, wow, look how much has changed. So we see here, how would I do this one? Well, you have the edge of the roads here. I mean, very overgrown road, but so you can see here I've included this bit of sidewalk here to correspond with that, and the edge of the building. Now this building is clearly a bit further set back from the street, but I put it so I imagine that say where the end of that facade is where I line that up. and it looks quite nice. So, and then also the street terminates in the distance, and it lines up nicely as well. So I'd say with vanished buildings, that's an important one. All right, this is the last one. I know, oh, we're running over time a bit. Just how much of a roof is visible, or just visible surfaces. Once again, so here, I didn't get this one exactly right, but you can see, you can just barely make out a little sliver of roof here. However, on this one, you can see, so I aimed for that. And see, I actually just focused on that one. But the lower roof is a little less visible here. So I was a bit closer. What I did is I went down on my knee, I think, and I got too low. And so you can also, so, you know, I wasn't able to see as much of the roof here. And it kind of, you know, it didn't turn out as much as well as I'd like. I aimed for on the x-axis. You can see where the door and this column intersect. You get a little sliver of the door there. So yeah, no, with when you're walking around a building, how much of the roof you can see, that kind of thing, is really important. Or how many, if it's like a commercial building, how many windows can you see if you're looking at it from a high angle? That kind of thing is very helpful. So yeah, so those are all my photography tips. And I hope, yeah, if anyone has any questions, please ask away. But so far so good. So also, I guess when you're doing a big set of photos, so I map them out, I put them in a spreadsheet, but when you go out and you take all these photos, you want to be able to, you know, you go back to your computer and you're editing them. Well, if you have like a whole bunch, you want to be able to match the photos that you took with the historic photo that you have used. So so what I do is I give every historic photo an identifier. It's just like a title, you know, file name, basically. You can just, here's some from Vancouver. And then when I'm out, I record, after I take a photo, I record the location where I took the photo, as well as the image number that in my camera. It'll be like, you know, DSCN underscore, you know, 8532. And then on a notepad or on a map, and then just go through and record them all that way. And then once I have completed, I can go back and be, okay, DSCN 1532, it's 1900 arch. Okay, next one. And it's easy just to bring them all up and quickly edit them together. So I'd recommend recording your data, unless you're just doing like a handful, in which case you might be able to remember. There's less hassle. So yeah. So to sum up, I'd say your overarching goal is to put your camera in the same physical space and aim it in the same direction as someone did decades ago, which is kind of a cool concept, really, when you think about it. And it's, you know, you're just standing in the footsteps of someone who, well, depending on how old the photo is you know, no longer with us. I would say carefully review each photo before shooting. Make a mental note of all the reference points. And then especially don't neglect the foreground, because that will tell you, you know, it's way too easy. Just if you do that, you will end up too close or too far away. Think in axes. Anyway, and try to lock in at least one axis. Oftentimes you can't, but when you can, it makes, you know, it gives us a degree of certainty to the photos, and it's also visually pleasing to the eye. And then, yes, like, please strongly recommend take a spread of photos. If it's on a distance shot, the spread could be, sometimes, you know, I'll be walking like 10 meters or something if it's like something in the distance, or it'll be a matter of inches. It depends on, you know, what the tolerance is of the photo and your margin for error. And then, yeah, do not get hit by a bus. Be careful when you're crossing the streets. Once again, a lot of these historic photos are taken from in the street. And if you're darting in and out of traffic, it can be dangerous. And be mindful of who is in the photos. You don't want to be taking pictures of people who don't want to be taken pictures of. I got beaten up, well, not beaten up, but hassled very badly in Boston by a bunch of guys who were sitting in front of a building, and I didn't even realize it, and they thought I was a cop or something. Or I got the Chinese ambassador's security in Ottawa hassled me. Military police in Esquimalt have hassled me. Police in Dawson Creek, because it was a school, which is not anyway, I didn't realize it was a school. It's not good, but it doesn't happen that often. But I've just been doing it a long time in a lot of places, and so yeah. Anyway, it's all part of the fun and the adventure. It's all a great experience. I really recommend you go out and do it in your community. and enjoy it. Yeah, I know I'm running pretty late here, but I just have a couple notes on. So on editing, once you have your photos edited, or once you start putting them together, I could go on a bunch about editing techniques, but I'll just say, you can pretty most straightforwardly, if you want to get a then and a now photo, put them side by side, do it in Photoshop. Get the, as I mentioned, like the field of view of a new photo of the new cameras is going to be much greater. So use that as your base layer. Drop the historic photo on top. Open up all the ones in your set. See which one matches best. And then try that one. And then once you have it's a matter of twisting it, getting the size right, and then you just crop it, export it. And once you've cropped, them to the same size, then they work together quite nicely. You can also, if you want to create those crossfades, you use layer masks and brushes. It's fairly there's a million ways to do it, really. So it's one of those things where there's no shortage of different tools you can use for it, but that's what I use. Just really detailed layer masks and brushes, and it's I can spend 10 minutes on them or 3 hours or so it's depending on the photo. If anyone has any questions about photo editing or anything and wants to follow up with me, I'll be happy to give a walkthrough as well. Another thing you can do is that you may have noticed that I was using our in-app camera to take the photos within those demonstrations there. You can get us to host your then and now photo or your historic photos within the app. We can map them out for you. You can go out and reshoot them yourselves, and then we can put them in the app for you. We can also host walking tours for you, driving tours. This is a great, I think, way if you want to get your communities historic tours online, get them available and free for the public, get them. We will help you host them for you, promote them for you, you'll be part of our growing network of different communities. And we can also help you with writing. We can do video production, audio production. We can do scavenger hunts, virtual tours. We do all kinds of other stuff. I didn't really cover here in this one today, but this then and now photo guide hopefully can get you out there, retaking some historic photos. And then, if you want to put them on a platform, we're more than happy to host it for you. If you have any questions or anything like that about going about this, or just how to do then and now photos, don't hesitate to ask. So. All right. Well, that was an hour. So I'll just end with some of our partner testimonials with us. So for our partner in Winnipeg, said it was got them exposure all over the world. It was completed. We developed for them 2 walking tours and 100 then and now photos. We in Strathmore. This was we did 150 then and now photos for a rather small community, but it was embraced by the senior population and used as part of the curriculum in their community now. The walking tours that we developed, and in Nanaimo, and we've been working with Nanaimo for a long time. We've been doing a number of different projects for them, but that's just it's another great project that we've done. So anyway, I thank you so much all for attending. I hope that was informative and helpful, and I would love to be able to learn about what you guys are working on, how then and now photos might be interesting or interesting in your community, if there's anything we can help with. And I hope you get out there and try taking a set this summer. This is a ton of fun. It's a great way to explore your community, and people really appreciate them. People love them. So thank you so much. If I'll stick around for some questions, and I'll just leave it at that. But thank you. And also, I'll be sending out a recording as well. So great. Cheers.